wife Elizabeth. She was working. We both were working in South Carolina. I directed an addiction program for the state there in South Carolina. She worked for a county, and we had known each other for some time, and I had visited her mother before, but this is the first time I ever found her totally unable to care for herself. And I knew within 15 minutes that I would never leave Brownsville. Was listed as a fireman. The objective was to extinguish fires in military aircraft, and when you weren't putting out aircraft fires, my MOS allowed me to jump out of helicopters under fire and take control of the situation on the ground. So it was a mixed bag of responsibilities, but my primary MOS was that of a firefighter.
Anything you'd like to talk about your service career?
It was just like you see on TV. It was we were not in combat, so it was every day was pretty much like the day before. We flew helicopters on training missions. We at one point were able to get one from Alaska and bring it back to Texas, where we rebuilt it. So I guess the high point of my military career was getting an old helicopter and refurbishing it from Alaska. Managed to get through with a degree in education, and I graduated in 70, went to work immediately in San Antonio teaching high school youth, and that lasted about a year, and I moved to Dallas, where I worked with the Department of Public Welfare. There I was in the Department of Welfare for probably 4 years. Decided to go to graduate school, put my application in to a number of schools and was accepted at George Warren Brown School of Social Work, where I went, stopped off at the 68 Democratic Convention for a little entertainment, and then went from 68 to 70 in school. And I had no idea what I was going to do after graduation. There was no preparation of that. So I got in a car, drove south till the car broke down in Houston, and I got a job at United Way, where I spent the next 10 years working at the United Way, allocating funds and evaluating programs.
And talk a little bit more about that.
Well, the curious thing in reflecting on that was, and I teach, by the way, graduate school social work here, and it's interesting to me that when I graduated, I had no idea about where I would seek employment. And I only by accident wound up in Houston. Car broke down, fella hired me, but I learned all about the way United Way raises funds, allocates funds, has agencies audited, evaluates their program, and volunteers making decisions about how much money to allocate to each agency to get the highest payoff for the buck. And so that was 10 years well spent and probably the best education I had. Graduated in 70, went to United Way, worked 10 years, left 1980, went to St. Louis and served in St. Louis as the associate director there.
And what did you do there?
Well, I allocated funds. I reviewed audits of agencies. I admitted new agencies. I worked with the state, county, and city human service divisions to build programs to serve people in need. United Way of America, which is in Alexandria, Virginia, and I designed a program to evaluate and assess needs in every community. It was a 2-year engagement. I designed the package, and it was sold worldwide, thousands of copies, and I helped start it. At the end of that process, I decided to look for jobs in the Washington area where my wife was working. Interviewed with the homeless agency, the Coalition for the Homeless there in Washington. Secured that job, ran the agency for about 4 years. Not an easy chore. Left then to care for my daughter who was going to college in New York and working at a homeless agency that Andrew Cuomo had formed. Worked there for 4 years. She graduated. I came back to Washington where my wife was.
What year was this?
And she was still there in Washington. She couldn't handle New York. We worked several years as consultants around the country. What I'm holding here is a 5-volume set of Compass, which after 2 years was the product helping local communities worldwide design programs that met total community needs. They were sold in Africa, they were sold in America, they were sold worldwide. I think it's something like $2,000 a package. So it was an interesting assignment, but they recruited me to do this job out of Des Moines, Iowa. And there I found myself at the end of that contract in Washington, D.C. with a wife that wanted to stay there. And I had to look for a job. Looked in the paper, found one at the Coalition for the Homeless. Interviewed for that position. Interestingly enough, only in nice restaurants by the board. And when I was hired to come on duty, I showed up at my work assignment and was told by 6 FBI agents to just stay out of the way. They were investigating the agency for fraud, and that when I left United Way of America and publishing that package, I looked for a job, was hired by a homeless agency in Washington, D.C., the Coalition for the Homeless, that had a rather big footprint in terms of service. They had 2 large shelters and I think something like 8 transitional homes. And it was a brand new experience for me administratively. The first day I came on duty, I met the staff, and FBI were there making copies of everything in the agency because we were being charged with some kind of fraud. And so I found a little desk and I opened the mail. I opened 5 letters from Washington, D.C., indicating that we had 5 facilities that were out of compliance that I had to close immediately. Got another letter from HHS indicating that I owed $850,000, and I had to repay that immediately. And several other letters that were about the same ilk. The auditor came to me about noon that day and said, "Well, Mr. White, Friday is payday. What should I do?" And of course, I said with a flourish, "Pay the people." He said, "Mr. White, there's no money in the checking account." So I got in my car, drove to the bank that they were doing business with, and was unceremoniously escorted out with no money. The second bank I went to were very cordial, and they asked where did I live and what kind of house did I live in. At the end of that, and I think naively so, I had just borrowed money against my own house, and I was able to make payroll. The short story is that lasted about 4 years, but we got the agency functioning, payments and arrears reinstated. The $800,000 from HHS was resolved, and the agency is still flourishing under the person I appointed as its director at that time. I was fortunate to be able to join my daughter in New York as she was going to go to school there, and I was honored to be hired by Andrew Cuomo and an agency called HELP. About 1990, I was hired by HELP to open a very large shelter there for families in the Bronx. I lived on site in the facility, and for a number of years opened that facility, hired the staff, and brought the new residents in. Following that, then I did work to help audit and write grants for other large facilities in the Bronx that HELP wanted to open. At the end of that time, when my daughter graduated, I rejoined my wife back in Washington, D.C., took a job with a consulting company doing consulting work all over the country, largely CSAT audits of agencies serving the addicted. At that point, we decided to retire to South Carolina and bought a home. And immediately I was hired by the state to run a program for addicted physicians. I designed the program and ran that for about 4 years before I came to I found my mother-in-law disabled in Brownsville and decided to care for her.